One. You are
Good
now live
evening.
on channel. Sorry.
Good evening. I'm now calling the meeting to order of the Templeton Advisory Committee. The Templeton Advisory Committee regular business is being broadcast live on TCTV Channel 8 and the TCTV YouTube channel. Responses will be made to comments in the TCTV YouTube channel as time permits. The agenda and meeting materials for this business meeting were posted to mytowngovernment.org/01468 no later than 48 hours prior to the scheduled meeting, in accordance with Commonwealth of Massachusetts open meeting laws. The chair reserves the right to add items to, remove items from, or change the order of the agenda. However, the agenda is posted in advance to give the committee and public time to review the agenda items and to ensure the meeting runs within the allotted time frame. At this time, I would call on the folks present here to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to have a discussion and approval of the November 21st, 24 meeting. It was the meeting that the last meeting we held, and it was to consider the special town meeting warrant articles followed by a group of citizens within town. Have each of the members had a chance to review the November 21st minutes?
Mr. Chair, I have not had a chance to review them. I attempted to obtain a copy of them earlier today and was unable to until about 5 minutes before the meeting started. So I would suggest or request that we entertain either I can abstain from the vote or we table this until our next meeting so that we have a chance to review it. It's an in-depth set of minutes because it was our pre-town meeting. I believe it's about 4 pages long. I'd like to review it.
I think I would like to defer to you and table the matter until our next meeting in February. Do all present agree to that?
Very well. All right. Then I'd like to make a motion to table consideration of these minutes until our next meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? There being none, I will call for a vote. Ms. Moser?
Yes.
Ms. Richard?
Yes.
Ms. McCombs?
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan?
Yes.
And I also vote yes, with a unanimous vote. So the minutes are tabled. The next item on the agenda, actually the next 4 items on the agenda are the budget versus actuals. And I had a chance to meet the new town treasurer for the first time today. And first thing I asked was why the December BVA were not out. And she told me that that they should be out by the end of the day today. And in fact, they are in our packets, but I have not had a chance to review them. But I also told her about the concerns of myself and other members of advisory about the number of, the large amount of monies that are unexpended, some of them from town meetings 5 or 6 years ago. And there's probably about 50 items that really need to be discussed in depth. And so I asked her that if I made a request through the town administrator, Adam Lamontagne, if she would be amenable to a request to appear at our February meeting to go over all of these items on the budget versus actuals. And I told her that I would try to have a list of questions in writing for her to review and give her several days to review the list of items in writing. I don't believe in surprising or ambushing people, especially our dedicated town officials. But I think that that is really the best way to address this in a comprehensive manner. It's really been several months, and we've had a change in the town accountant position. She related to me that she's still coming up to speed. And I certainly appreciate that, which is in part the reason why the December, and the BVA for November and December were kind of late. So I would like to give her the opportunity to respond to written inquiries made by advisory, and I'm hopeful that that Adam will permit her to appear at our next meeting in February. So at this time, I would like to table review of the October, November, and December 2024 budget versus actuals. The January 2025 budget versus actual has not yet come out. So I would ask for a motion and a second on a motion to table those three items.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
any questions that we have, can we filter those questions through you?
Yes. I would certainly encourage all of you to submit your written questions to me, and then I will in turn put them all on one sheet in writing for the town administrator and the town accountant. Is there any further discussion? Okay, at this time, I'll call for a vote. Mr. Moser,
Yes.
Ms. Richard,
yes,
Ms. McCormick,
Yes.
Mr. Capel.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda under new business is item C, discussion and possible recommendation concerning House Bill number 3701, the banning of certain types of plastics manufacturing, and also the disposal of solid and plastic waste. I would just like to make two observations before opening this up for discussion. The first observation is obviously nearly 400 people attended the special town meeting, and certainly the voice of the voters who appeared were very, very clear in opposition to this proposed plastics manufacturing plant for many reasons. The bill, House Bill number 3701, was introduced in the last session, and it went to die in what's called a study committee. That's how bills they go to die, is in the study committee. Now, sometimes it goes to study committee because it needs to be further looked at, which is certainly a legitimate reason. And other times, this is the way the general court says that they don't want to pass the bill. And I don't know whether this bill is within the category of a bill that the legislature wants to die and sidestep, or if it's a bill that they really need to further study. I suspect it's a bill that they need to further study. I have had conversations with the Toxic Waste Committee people and other people about this bill, and I think the bill is I understand now has 15 co-sponsors, and my understanding is that the lead representative is Representative Zlotnik, probably primarily because of the concern of many residents that their concerns have been expressed to him, and also because the proposed plant is within Templeton, which is obviously within his district. What concerns me, and I've made this clear, is out of the 15 co-sponsors of this bill, not one of them is on the leadership team of the House of Representatives. And the leadership team quite candidly, if the Speaker of the House, Ron Mariano, or the Chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Aaron Michalewicz, if they do not co-sponsor the bill or are not on board or do not express their approval, then in my opinion, the bill has a very good chance of dying by being sent off to be studied to death. So I just, at this time, I would like to, invite, comments on any other members at this time. Those are certainly my comments and why I placed this on the agenda. Does anybody else wish to be heard?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
did have an opportunity to review the text of the bill as well, and it seems like it would solve a lot of the issues of concern for the residents of the town that represented their views during town meeting. Hopefully you can get some traction, and that would solve some of the issues that we've been dealing with on a town level.
Does anybody else wish to comment?
No, thank you.
What I was going to suggest, and I need to get the sense of the committee as a whole on this, is that I think that we should, as advisory, make a recommendation, and I think it would certainly have a backing of the a clearly large number of townspeople who made themselves heard at the special town meeting. But I do think that we, as advisory, should make a recommendation that the select board write to our representatives, which would be Jonathan Zlotnik and State Senator Peter Durant, expressing, the select board should do this, expressing concerns about this proposed plant, and stating that it's the sense of the town people that they are in opposition to this. That would be essentially the wording of the recommendation. Is there any comments on that? Anybody wish to comment on that?
Mr. Chair, I would just like to make sure that we are conscientious of asking the select board to write the letter in a way that's representative of the vote that we had at town meeting, rather than expressing any interests one way or the other that we might have personally.
I think that's a fair comment.
And I think it would have the same thrust and point to the legislators that we're trying to write to.
So what you're saying is the letter should reflect that nearly 400 residents showed up at a special town meeting and expressed their opposition. And in light of that opposition, our select board should write a letter to Representative Zlotnik and Senator Durant, asking that they approve, work to approve this bill, House Bill 3701.
Sure, I think that's right along what I was thinking.
Anybody else wish to comment?
No, I think that's a good idea.
Do you think you can frame a motion and
Right now, or want to
You want-
type up design?
yes, be putting you on the spot to do that.
I can work on one. I don't know that I have the wording right now, unless Andrew wants to reiterate that. And
I can give it a shot. So,
Okay.
Based on our conversation, Mr. Chair, I would move that we vote to recommend to the select board that they write a letter to our representatives, Zlotnik and Senator Durant, expressing that it is the will of town meeting that we oppose plastics recycling facilities, and we would ask Senator Durant and Representative Zlotnik to consider House Bill 3701 and consider supporting it for passage.
So moved.
You have that. You can read-
I will go back on the recording.
The great news is this is under recording.
Yes. I will go back and get all the wordings to type up for us to sign.
Okay, Julie, are you okay with that?
Just a point of order. I think I made it in the form of a motion, so we probably need a second before we can continue to discuss.
He's right.
Okay. Thank you. You're correct.
I would second that motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, at this time, I'll call for a vote on the motion is made by Mr. Moser. Mr. Moser,
Yes.
Ms. Richard,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes,
And I also vote yes.
We'll type that,
Okay,
get it to you for signature.
good, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, on to the next item. Next item is D under new business. This would be the discussion and possible recommendation concerning alleged non-payment by the town of Phillipston of bills related to the Narragansett Regional School District and the new elementary school. Mr. Kaplan, you seem to be quite familiar with this issue, and I would ask you to speak first, if you may.
sure. Well, obviously, this issue goes back a few years. Where, the Templeton residents wanted a new school. They voted on it, not only through town meeting, but also through ballot vote. Locations were looked at, multiple locations were looked at. And at where it is today, where the old Templeton Center School location was, is the location of where the new school is. Phillipston wanted nothing to do with it, even though there was an agreement that we had back then that was signed and agreed upon by both communities. We, as the town of Templeton, understood that. We went forward with the school build and took on the responsibility of the debt of that school. It's a regional school district, and I know a lot of Phillipston folks who watch. They continuously say that they're paying for the school, but I mean, they're paying for the teachers in the school with the 100+ kids of the Phillipston kids that are in the elementary school today out of the 500, almost 600 kids. But as far as the debt of the school itself, of the $21 million that was put on the responsibility of the Templeton taxpayers, of the $42 million it took to build the school, we were only responsible for 21 because the State School Building Authority paid a large percentage of that bill. In doing so, we kept paying the bill. I mean, this has been ongoing now for some time. And now we're at a point where the agreement has still not been signed. The regional agreement has still not been notified as signed by Phillipston. It's been signed by Town of Templeton. We've gone meeting after meeting. I was actually on the committee that went through the review along with Select Member Tim Toth ad nauseum. And the only thing that was changed out of the agreement was primarily the names of the schools and some minor, verbiage changes based on the fact that the East Templeton School is no longer in existence. The Baldwin School is no longer in existence. And also Templeton Elementary School is the new school. So minor changes. So to this day, as we sit here today, Phillipston has still not signed the agreement. So not only, I think that there should be avenues of approach to Phillipston as far as, I wouldn't say reimbursement of all the funds, because I think even at the 80%, 20% that the ratio is today, it would be a significant amount of money that Phillipston would actually have to pay Templeton. But I think that there should be some legal action taken, at least maybe a demand letter, from town council through the Board of Selectmen to the town of Phillipston to stipulate the fact that, hey, the agreement hasn't been signed. What other avenues can we go? So I think step one should be, we should get town council involved to at least get the agreement signed. Then step two would be to figure out through the chief financial officer of the town, because again, I know how the bonds were set up, because I was the one that set them up back years ago for the first $6 million. And then as we progressed, we rolled those in to a 30-year loan. So I don't know where those sit now. I would have to, discuss that with Adam to see even if there's something that we could do financially to potentially with Phillipston to help us with the financial costs of the actual building itself. But I think we definitely need to come up with some type of recommendation to move forward, number one, with the agreement, because they still have not identified the agreement. They haven't signed the agreement. When the agreement was done and we did it at town meeting floor, town people, Templeton all agreed with the changes, which were minor. We all agreed. It was voted, it was passed. It was supposed to go to Phillipston's town meeting. It didn't even make the agenda. And it's been like 3 years and it still hasn't made the agenda. So at this point, I think we've exhausted everything we could with the school. I know Dr. Casavant, his office is kind of like in the middle between both communities. And not that he could put his hands up, but there's nothing he can do. So the only thing that we potentially could do is do a recommendation to the select board, at least to do a demand letter for them to at least sign the agreement, because they're in the wrong. I think I'm not sure what Desi says, but I'm sure Desi Legal will probably do the same thing and probably give us the same recommendations, because we would have to have some type of legal battle. And I really don't want a legal battle. I would hope that they would come to the table, at least with the agreement that's on the table now, and sign it, because there's really no big changes in it. Yep.
I have a question
Yep.
for you, Mr. Kaplis, I'm trying to define the scope of the problem in my head as far as the dollars involved. And, I did some, back of the envelope scribbling.
Mhm.
So it was the original bond, total about $21 million.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And is it fair to say that Phillipston's share would be about 15%?
Yep.
So if it's 15%, I have a figure of $3,150,000 as their portion of the bond. Is that rough? I mean, it's rough.
It's rough.
So I took that, and was it a 30-year note?
It was.
So with a 30-year note, if they're just the principal
Mhm.
of $3,150,000 a year, is I have $105,000 per year.
Mhm.
And if it's been 6 years, that would mean that we are talking about what Phillipston has allegedly not paid, being, again, this is back of the envelope, but
Yep.
it looks like it's about $630,000 total, which does not include the interest on the bonds that are
Right.
paid, which would probably bump it up to 750,000 maybe.
Maybe.
So we're talking potentially as much as $250,000 that the taxpayers of Templeton have shouldered, rather than the taxpayers of Phillipston sharing this with us.
And Mr. Chair and
Yes.
Mr. Cavill, says that also, who is responsible for the maintenance of the building? Was that part of?
They actually do how they worked it out. It's like it's a $1 a year lease that the school, uses the building for. And I think they maintain it. The school department has to maintain it. If it's major catastrophic issues such as, like when we first got the school built, there was a catastrophic issue with something on the roof. I think it was one of the air handlers or something like that, but it was a part that had to come out of Canada, and it was something like $150,000. But it was covered under the warranty. Thank God.
Knock on wood for that
No
one.
kidding. I remember that. I was like, yeah, I was like, so it was covered under the warranty, so we weren't responsible. But based on the agreement that Templeton agreed to, I believe the amount went up to, I think, $15,000. So any major catastrophic event that attacks the school that's more than $15,000, the town of Templeton is responsible.
I'm understanding that there's like the grassy part that's next to the playground is
Yep.
like a mud factory.
It is.
And that needs to be repaired with some sort of something that's not grass.
Oh, yeah,
that's
that
safe
was-
for the kids.
That was, I'm glad you brought that up.
There's an issue with birds
Yep.
that needs to be addressed, because then there could be a problem with bats. So there's like some maintenance that's involved with that.
Like guano.
Yeah, well, so I guess birds are like nesting in a part of the building, like on the front or the face of it. And they have to put some kind of mesh to prevent the birds, because if you have birds, you eventually will get bats. So.
And once again, we can just add this to the bill, tally it up, and Phillipston really needs to be held accountable to help us out
Yeah, I mean, you
Well,
know,
on all avenues. This is really a frustrating situation for me because I happen to be sitting on the board at the time. They should have signed it, and they should have since then. I don't know how much pressure's actually been put on them. It never made it to a town meeting in the town of Phillipston, which is utilizing this school building. Shame on us,
Well,
that's so frustrating.
the reason why I asked Mr. Kaplis some pretty pointed questions about the dollar amount was really twofold. I think that the taxpayers of the town of Templeton, should know that, in effect, they have paid to date probably $750,000 that Phillipston should have paid. That's the first reason. And then the second reason why I'm trying to arrive at a dollar amount is that we should send a demand letter, and the demand letter should have the entire dollar amount, which Phillipston should have paid. It should be an accurate, or at least the best accuracy that the town of Templeton officials and town council can determine. And, that should be at least a starting point for any negotiations. I mean, I hope something could be negotiated. But I really think that, this is the time for a demand letter, because every year that this goes by, if you let this go for another 3 years, the amount could very easily be over $1 million. $1 million. And it's just not fair.
Mr.
So,
Chair.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Julie, I'm sorry.
Yes, Julie.
oh, I'm sorry. So if I may, should we as a committee consider requesting that the Board of Selectmen put this on an agenda? They haven't put this on an agenda in 2 years. They haven't even talked about it.
Do you have any insight as to why the board might not have talked about this?
I'm going to make no comment on that at this time.
Okay,
I get myself in hot water easily enough. I don't want to go down that road.
I understand.
I think the first thing,
I think what you're suggesting is that there might be other considerations at play, and that's the hornet's nest, so to speak.
Absolutely. They should be discussing this issue. It should be on an agenda for the Board of Selectmen to discuss. This is a serious situation. I agree with you 100% that if they continue to ignore it, the price is going to continue to sit. And Templeton's taxpayers are not only currently, but will in the future be paying for all of this. They should be discussing this.
You know what kills me about this is, we had a couple of residents in the past 3 months, comment about handicap signs in front of Scout Hall and at the river's edge in Baldwinville, handicap signs. And yet there's no comments about hundreds of thousands of dollars. It just amazes me how there is discussion at the molecular level, but not the big picture level. And that's my 2 cents. Is there any
Mr.
further?
Chairman, I agree with you. So that would be my 2 cents as well. And, if you think about it, people are out there demanding a skate park, an ice skating park for our children, which is fantastic. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was a sports mom all the way, but at the same time, nobody's concerned that we don't have enough plows on the road when we get a foot of snow in the town. So, we could talk about this all night long, but I would strongly suggest the advisory committee suggest that the Board of Selectmen put it on an agenda and start talking about it so the townspeople are well aware of what's going on. Phillipston is not paying anything toward the brand new school in our town. Nothing. Whether it be 15%, 20%, 5%, they have paid nothing.
I I would suggest this motion, and maybe Mr. Mosier with his talent at thinking on his feet. Uh, Based on what you said, Julie, I would consider the wording of a motion to be a demand that the select board place on an agenda within 60 days or prior to the annual town meeting, discussion and possible recommendations concerning monies that Phillipston, the town of Phillipston, has not paid to the Narragansett Regional School District.
I think that you're being generous and that sounds great. I would give them 30 days.
Okay,
Well, the dollars wouldn't go to the school district, it would come to the town.
That's correct. I agree with John on that. They owe us.
yeah, it should come to the town's general fund.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say caution, but I would caution, because the first step I would do is I would have like a two-step window here. The first step would be the demand first for them to acknowledge and sign the agreement. Then step two would be the demand for whatever dollars based on the agreement that they signed. Because in the agreement, it stipulates that they are responsible for our percentages of any new structure or building or school within whatever town, Phillipston or Templeton. So this goes both ways. So if Phillipston residents are listening, I mean, you just spent a whole boatload of money for a new roof for that building. That was your old elementary school. Upwards of over $110,000 to fix the repairs, which was great. I mean, if you have some insight, some foresight, some thought moving forward, looking forward like 5, 10, 15 years from now, we know you want a school. We know there needs to be a school there. So if they took the 110,000 and demolished the school, called the state school building authority, they would have came in with a boilerplate template of a school for X amount of dollars. And guess who would have been on the hook for the other half of that? Templeton, because we signed the agreement. So I think first and foremost, they need to acknowledge the agreement. They need to sign the agreement. And then secondly, then we can send a demand letter for whatever funds are owed based on what the attorneys think. But the agreement has to be signed first. They haven't even acknowledged it.
Yeah, I agree with you in principle,
Mhm.
Mr. Caplis, but I differ. I think that even without the existence of an agreement, there's a notion in the law called quantum merit,
Mhm.
and it's a very strong doctrine, and it's an ancient doctrine of law, and it basically says if you're using a service or using goods or the like, whether there's an agreement or not, you got to pay for it.
Understood.
Quantum merit, and
Well, I would then check with Adam, because I don't know how the bond is set up and how that would affect the town. If even if at this point, Phillipston's even able to compensate the town at this point, I don't even know. I don't know where the bond is. I don't know how it was set up, because again, we're not talking like getting a loan at the, down the street bank and getting a new car loan. We're talking, millions of dollars. So I don't know how we set it up. So that's something you should have discussion with the chief financial officer on that one.
yeah,
There may be another option to consider too, just mechanically. Theoretically, the school committee votes to assume making payments on the bond, we would still hold it, but then they could assess Phillipston for the portion of it that is allocated to their students.
Yep, that is potentially not a route.
Can that be done without rewriting the bond?
That is outside of my area of expertise, Noel, but it's certainly something that I think is worth exploring.
Because the problem is, I mean, if you have to rewrite the bond agreement, that could be very, very sticky. Very sticky.
I think we're getting a little off though. I would agree with John. We need to do step number 1, have them sign the agreement, and then talk about step number 2 immediately following. Like there should be no lapse there. There's no reason for any lapse. This
Except-
was an airtight agreement at a regional school district. You would never see Ash West in this mess, ever.
And the only reason why I say that is because even though there is a clause in the agreement that if they don't sign, they still have to be applied by the same agreement, even if they don't sign it.
But the quantum merit.
It is. And I understand that, but I mean, even Desi, I mean, if you talk to Dr. Kazimat, even Desi got involved because we sent our version, we sent it to them for their legal department to look at. It was sent back to us. We sent it to town legal. Everything was done on our end. It never went to town floor on Phillipston's end. So it's still, even the agreement's still a legal action. That still needs a demand letter for them to acknowledge and sign.
So you're saying that we should ask the select board, recommend to the select board that they place on the agenda an agenda item, which would be to discuss and vote on compelling Phillipston to sign the agreement,
Right, send them a demand notice from the town
to
council
sign the
to
agreement,
sign the agreement. And then once we have that,
then the monies.
then we can discuss the monies. And as you know as well as I do, it's what they owe. I get it, potentially based on your notebook writings, but there's agreements that the towns can get into with them concerning dollars. There's things that can happen, when legal gets involved, and it's the only way we can do it now at this point. It's the only way, but I want to figure out how we can do it. I mean, Andrew's point, I mean, there's definitely, I mean, I would love, that was one of the suggestions. I mean, give the loan to the school, let the school handle it, then we'll just increase our portion of that we need to pay based on what the loan is. So instead of 1 million, say it's 800,000, so 200,000 Phillips, they're still going to save Templeton $200,000 because we're paying the loan anyways. So no matter which way you whatever cup you put it in, as long as somebody becomes responsible for it, and it's going to lessen Templeton's contribution based on a joint venture with the other community, it's still going to be in our favor. But again, I don't know how the bond was written. I don't know who did it. I don't know where it is, because I'm sure it had to be rewritten and redone. And I'm not sure if, depending on what Adam says, because I mean, he's the chief financial officer, that would be up to him to make those determinations based and with the select board. But to give them the recommendations first to say, hey, sign the agreement, send them a demand from our town council to say, hey, sign it. You have X amount of days to do it, or your next town meeting, however they want to word it. Because they have town meetings just like we do. They typically have 2 a year. So, and we have to look at what their dates are to see if they're able to do that. And then what consequences are going to be set forth if they don't sign it. I mean, these are things that town council and, the chief financial officers have to get involved in. We can only send up the recommendations.
All right, is there a consensus among the members for what Mr. Kaplis and Julie have suggested that it be a two-step process? First to ask that the select board place signing the agreement on their agenda and writing have town council write a demand letter if that be necessary for Phillipston to execute the agreement. We have, that being the first step, and then the second step to discuss the dollars down the road.
So-
Is there agreement? Is there agreement that that's the approach that we should take?
I have a
For-
question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So if they sign the agreement tomorrow, then facetiously speaking, does that put them on the hook then to start paying going forward? And then we could look back and say, oh, and by the way, here's what's been paid and you didn't pay.
Based on the agreement anyways that was signed, back in the 70s, back in the 80s, they're still responsible. So, I mean, this is kind of giving us a certain amount of time so we can figure out where the bond is, who has the bond, what other avenues. Andrew was right. I mean, is it something that the school can take over the bond? Is that something that can be done? And then we can just, pay the school, and then they can contribute whatever Phillipston's prospective pieces for that elementary school to them. these are questions I don't have the answers to. That's out of my wheelhouse, but it's definitely something that could be looked into, and it gives us the opportunity and time to do that.
I think that's a good approach.
Because again, you're dealing with stuff, I mean, I don't have 100% of the answers, so I don't know. The person that would know would be the guy that sits in that back office.
And I just am really, I'm really mystified as to why the select board has not at least put this on the agenda. And I think that the two-step approach is it's a good approach. Is there any further discussion? I would entertain a motion along the lines of that advisory recommend to the select board that they place on the agenda for discussion and recommend that they vote to have town council write a letter requesting or demanding that Phillipston sign the agreements necessary.
So
moved.
moved.
Mr. Mosier, you want to clean up the language?
No, I think I'll leave that to somebody else on the board tonight.
You already have a motion in a second, so
Okay.
it's pretty good.
All right, who made the motion?
You did.
I did.
And Julie seconded it.
Okay.
I certainly did.
And did you have a chance to write?
I'm just gonna go back, but Mr. Chair, I don't know if you care, there was a bunch of comments. I just noticed, I don't know if they're relevant or
Any good comments?
I'm trying to read.
No?
Know if there were any,
Are there any questions
More
from the
insights.
public?
Public comments are from Bob May.
yeah, Mr. May said that when the school was funded, Phillipston was not going to TES, which is true. Only after Phillipston School closed did they move all the elementary kids to Templeton.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you for that insight, Mr. May.
Yes, I did know that too. I don't want to read everything out loud if it's not
Okay.
appropriate, but yes.
All right. Can you go back to the tapes and?
Yes, I can.
All right.
I'm writing the time down so I know when to go.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Yeah.
All right, we ready to vote? Okay, Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Ms. Richard,
Yes.
Robert,
Yes.
Mr. Caplis,
Yes.
and I also vote yes. Okay, the next item on the agenda, discussion regarding attendance of the Massachusetts Municipal Conference, Mass Municipal Association Conference to be held later this month. I just want to make sure I'm correct. Julie, John, Andrew, you have stated individually to me that you are unable or to attend or have other commitments. Is that correct?
That's correct on my end, yes.
Okay.
Same.
And Ms. Mosier, is that also correct?
Yes.
Okay. I did, Jacqueline and myself have been registered. I am going to attend for at least Friday. It's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday event. The main day is Friday. It's my intent to attend that day, at least that day. Jacqueline, I believe you're going to attend
All 3 days.
all 3 days. So we'll have representation
Great.
at the meeting. Does anybody wish to comment on that item further?
Just a couple of quick comments. I think it's I've not attended. It sounds like there may be some valuable information that can be gleaned from it. I'm glad that we have somebody who will be attending on each day. At the same time, I look at it, I understand that there's a cost for each person to attend, and then additionally, there are like hotel rooms that are available, and depending on that, where the town may be paying for people to stay in the hotels. That's what I heard. I'm not sure if that's exactly 100% correct or not. And I'm glad that at least on our committee, we're going to be able to save some money for the town's taxpayers by limiting our attendance this year. This is going to become a recurring theme, I think, as we go through the rest of our agenda and the next few meetings that we have and the few months that we have. This upcoming budget is going to be a very difficult, tight, bare bones budget. I believe that the MMA, in fact, the town administrator intends to cut that from the budget next year altogether. So hopefully we can get some good information from it this year. I would hope that we would have an eye on really trying to get the most out of it while being the most prudent that we can with the money of the townspeople.
Mr. Moser, to answer your question, the budget amount is $1,000, and between Jacqueline and myself, it'll probably be $700 to $800 of that will be expended. And you are correct, the town administrator is planning to cut that item from the upcoming budget because it's going to be a very difficult budget season. I think it's money well spent. There's not very many opportunities that we as volunteer board members have to meet with state officials. I went to a conference in October, I believe, and I was able to speak with housing people and talk with them, and it was very enlightening. Tell you. Are there any other comments before I move on?
Mr. Chair, I agree that it is a good opportunity for a small town like us to intermingle with other maybe larger towns or even other small towns and get some feedback of see what's working in other towns and what's not. It's $1,000 for our budget, and I'm not sure of other budgets, but $1,000 isn't gonna fund a school or a teacher or an ambulance. So I think it's important that we get out there and attend these type of things when available to us.
Any other comments?
I would agree with that. And I did, as a select board member, attend a few early on during my tenure there. And you do get a lot of connection, and it's really well worth it. But I agree that our upcoming budgets are extremely tight. So yeah, I hope to not see, there was a time when like anybody could go. It was outrageous what we were spending for us to go there. So hopefully they kind of tighten that budget a little bit in the future if they don't actually eliminate it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to the next item. And that is, you may recall at an earlier meeting that I handed everybody a sheet of paper regarding legislative priorities to ask of the select board, create a possible recommendations concerning the legislative priorities of the town for Representative Zlotnik and State Senator Peter Durant. I have the sheet. It's the same sheet that I presented earlier, but I eliminated the paragraphs concerning shortfalls and just stuck to what I felt the town needed. And it's a wish list, and I understand that it's a wish list, but I also feel that if you don't ask, you don't get. So I guess my first question is everybody have the list in front of them?
Again, I do not. I tried to get a packet earlier this afternoon and it wasn't ready yet.
Okay, it wasn't,
It wasn't prepared.
but, okay.
I have seen your list that you sent me previously.
That's the list. That's the list with the last, the shortfalls item missing. I would certainly entertain a motion to table this until next month. Give everybody a chance to go through it.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion on tabling? Okay, there being none, Mr. Mosher,
To table, yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Yes.
done.
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, this will be tabled
Take
until
one,
next
give one
month.
to
Yeah,
Andrew.
oh, sure. Yeah, you got one? Tom?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I have the other one.
What I'll do is I'll leave, I'll leave the list as I changed it, for you, Andrew, and you, Julie.
Give Andrew.
Yeah,
Give it to her.
yeah, I'll give it to Kelsey.
So she can upload it into the system, please.
Yeah.
So public record.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, the next item on the agenda is G. I placed this on the agenda because Julie had served on the Capital Improvements Committee, and they gave their final report last month. And I want to give Julie the chance to talk to the public and to the rest of us on advisory about her work on the Capital Improvements Committee. Julie, do you have anything that you wish to say about that, about your work on the committee?
Actually, they had a really challenging year this year. They didn't have a big budget and they had just so many requests, but that happens all the time. Unfortunately, I was unavailable for last month's meeting or November's meeting, so I really don't have anything to bring up like that I can think of on the moment. But I can certainly look back at my notes at a later date and bring it up to the next meeting.
Okay, I can put it on the agenda for a future meeting. The next
Yeah, that would be great. Then I'd be able to pull up all my notes.
Okay, I just have two things to say. As first of all, Julie, thank you for your service on the committee during the fall months. It's a considerable amount of time. And I did read the final report that was prepared by Justice. I did
Yes.
read through it. And I think for the public's benefit, what I noticed was 2 years ago when I sat on that committee, we had about under $300,000. I think it was actually $158,000. And there were $1.3 million in requests. And it appears that, this year there were, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears that there were $300,000 to $400,000 available. And the requests were over $2 million.
Yeah, they were pushing 3 million.
Yeah, it just seems like this gap, and my point is, it just seems like this gap grows year by year. And
Yeah, I think that committee is focused now on trying to make sure that department heads need to start really putting things on agendas that they're going to need 5 years down the road. They need to look more toward future purchases. Does that make any sense? I mean, they just on a whim will put in for these huge things. And some of these things have just continued. I can say for highway, I used to look at those and go, wow, they would ask for something for 7 or 8 years and nothing gets passed. I mean, it's nobody's fault. It's just not, they're not releasing the funds. So they just have to look further out. They need like a formula of some kind to look further out and start planning what they need each year and not look for big bulk items each year. Does that make any sense?
I believe it makes sense, and I would just add, to the comment is I've had, conversations with a couple of the department heads in the past year. Where they have stated to me that they, just gave up requesting items because, it never gets passed at town meeting, you know, that those requests never get funded, and my response to that is that whether you get the item or not, you need to keep asking, because the boards, you know, the select board and advisory and the taxpayers at large, they need to know what your department really needs, and if you don't ask for it, number one, you're not gonna get it, and, you know, number two, you know, the town is not going to be aware of it. And I just find that, you know, put yourself in the shoes of a department head to ask for something, 4 or 5 or 6 times and not have it funded has to be very discouraging.
Yeah, I agree with that comment. I'm sure they're discouraged. I don't know how to correct that. You know, I have no comment on that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr.
Right,
Kaplan.
I tell you, that was probably dealing with the town politics here for a couple years. And that was probably the best report that I've seen ever.
The most recent report.
Yes.
Yes, I
It was
would
the
agree.
best report ever. What Julie's talking about with the forecasting is very important, not just with your capital items such as, you know, vehicles and fire trucks and ambulances and Scott packs and police ballistic vests, which have all life expectancies. Those are all forecasting items that most department heads can forecast, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. But this was the best report, and I think Julie's input, all the people on that committee, they did a tremendous job with over $3 million plus of request to come up with $300,000-400,000 of expenditures. It was really well done and well drawn up, and you did a great job, Julie.
I echo
Thank you,
that.
John. I appreciate that. He's doing a phenomenal job, the young man that runs that, and his formulas are really looking great. And I think every meeting that I attended, I was always complimenting him on the way out of the building. He's really putting a lot of efforts there.
Is that Justice?
Yes.
Justice, yes.
I think
Yes.
one of the biggest issues is the fact that the townspeople don't know. I mean, they see the Board of Selectmen meetings, they watch that show and they keep it on the same channel 8 and but they don't know how it works, how it's supposed to work, how, you know, I mean, how capital is and what capital is and how it's supposed to work and where's the money come from and who pays for what, who makes what decision to make what determination, who gets what. I think that it's more having the information that's being put out there and broadcast as much as we can so that people can understand, you know, the dilemmas that we face every single day and every single year in this community. And that, you know, everybody talks about, you know, within their means, let's stay within our means, let's stay within our means. I'm like, we are, but when you get Proposition 2.5 and the fact that everything else is going up 3, 5, 6, 8%, how can you sustain yourself like that? I know on a fixed income, I could not sustain myself like that. If I'm at like 2.5% and that's what it is, and then my insurance is going to go up like 12%, how does that affect everybody at home? I think people don't realize what it really takes to make a committee like that, to look at all those demands, those dollar items, to say, okay, how do we figure this out to who gets what and what's the priority? And they did a really great job in doing that. They really did. And I can't, it's a thankless job to be on that committee. It really is, because it's like you have $5 and you get to buy 2 candy bars. How do you do it? It's challenging. It's really challenging. It is. But Julie, again, great job.
Yeah, I want to say thank you as well, and also Justice. When I sat on that committee, I was very impressed with his thoughtfulness and the thoroughness of his reports. And you know, I read the report, the most recent one, and it was really a great report. And everybody in the town should have a chance to see it, just to see the gap between the money's available and you know, and the requests. And every single one of the requests are legitimate requests. Every single one.
Julie, that made the town website, didn't it? Did it go on the town website?
I believe it did, yes.
And so I think everybody should realize, and any townspeople that are watching, please put it on social media, go to the town's website, just take a look at that report. It's well done.
Yeah, nuts and bolts work.
Yep.
Right, any further comments? All right, thank you, Julie. Item H, discussion on the work of the school, budget committee, that would be you, Jacqueline.
That is me. I have been attending the school committee subcommittee meetings since October. There's one a month and they don't have their numbers ready yet for what they're asking for next year. But the last subcommittee meeting was just last week and there seems to be a demand for special ed teachers in all of the schools. And counselors at the middle school. The most vulnerable population of our district is where the need is. And there's actually, I learned that Narragansett has a bunch of ELL learners, English language learners, and from several different languages that they're coming in. It's not all just one language. So there's a need for the right teachers to teach these children English as well. And hopefully in the next month or two, they're gonna tie their numbers in and give us a better idea of what their ask is going to be for the upcoming school year.
Is there any discussion on the recent contract with the teachers?
No, there was not that I have heard yet. Nothing has been mentioned of that sorts. And there's still no numbers or anything on the roof repairs that need to be done on the big main middle school, high school building either. So.
Is there anything that you could think of that the public should know? This is really directed as much as to the public as it is to your fellow
Yes,
members.
yeah, I mean, obviously just the need for these special ed teachers. And I actually made a comment at the meeting that I've noticed that it seems like we're not building too many more houses here in Templeton, but it seems as though Phillipston has houses going up here and there. So the influx of possible more kids, I guess the kindergarten right now is the biggest kindergarten class I've ever seen. And there's not one single kid from out of district that attends Narragansett. They don't in the kindergarten class. So they're all Templeton and Phillipston kids right now. There's 5 kindergarten teachers. So we just need to support our school and their needs to help, these vulnerable students and in all schools.
Can I just ask you a specific question? Did Dr. Kazamak give you a number of special ed teachers that were needed?
So Templeton Elementary wants 1. The middle school is a teacher and a para and additional counselor. The high school needs a new sped teacher. And
We're talking about between 5 and 6
Yep.
positions. Is that a fair?
yep.
Okay.
And a 2.7% increase for technology.
Does anybody wish to make any comments?
Mr. Casvan has his work cut out for him.
Sure does.
Certainly does.
And
That's
it's
a
not-
tough budget. That's
it's
a
not
tough
over.
budget for him.
Yeah, and especially when they've grown about 136 kids in the last 2.5 years. And the fact that we have 54 units being built in Baldwin Elementary School, which is going to encompass how many more kids? 45 to 50, just a guesstimation. Not
Yeah.
to mention the other stick builds that are going on right now as we speak. So
Plus the Affordable Housing Act, which
correct.
in 5 years to 10 years down the road may have a huge unforeseen impact.
We're filling that elementary school for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was just said the other day, I think it was 48% of our budget is 48% of the town's budget goes to the school.
Believe it.
So
that's-
if I can, on that note, if I can just say, I'm reading the YouTube comments at this point, and I'm just kind of giggling in my head because a few years back when I did support a new school, I'm wondering if I did not support a new school and a new school did not come into this town, would we actually have, students in everybody's backyards learning their curriculums, or like, where were we going to put all these children? So I'm certainly happy that I voted in the school.
Well, the students would have been in trailers. I remember that from the sixties. Students in trailers.
I don't go back that far.
I hate to admit that I do, but. All right,
Mr. Chair, I do have just a couple of comments on the school
Sure.
budget, more so than necessarily the feedback that we got. And thank you to Member Macumber, and thank you to Member Richard for the work that you've done on these committees and keeping us up to date. So, I kind of alluded to this earlier, and Mr. Chair, you agreed. It's going to be a very challenging budget environment going forward. And one of the largest, probably the largest single item that the town has as a budget number is the school number that comes in. So many people will remember that last year, there was a big discussion at town meeting as how are we going to fill the school number that they came up with. And to remind everybody, from fiscal year 2024 to 2025, we went from 7,692,000 for an assessment to 8,572,000. That's an increase of $880,000 in 1 year. That's about 11.5% increase that the school charged us for the year. That's a big increase. Now, I know they have needs like every other department in town. The town is limited to a 2.5% increase that we can increase revenues on property taxes, Prop 2.5. Everyone here knows that. For the people watching at home, there's only so many years that we can do 11.5% increases when we can only increase our revenues by 2.5%. And so kind of doing out the math, if we did a 2.5% increase on the school's number from last year, that would be an increase of $214,319, right? So right around $215,000. Again, a 2.5% increase on the school number would be a total of $8,787,084. So I'm hoping that, as a marker, we can kind of use that 2.5% increase for the school number. I mean, they're going to come back with whatever they come back with. But I know that in the past, and maybe Ms. Richard, you can speak to this. I know the select board has voted to support 2.5% escalators as sort of a guide mark or a guidepost on yearly numbers for the school, so that we can try to at least project some number. And I'm just hoping that after the extraordinarily large and I think generous increase that the town came up with last year, including $430,000 out of our stabilization fund, that hopefully we're not going to see a number like that from the school this year.
No, I would agree with you. That's how we've used the formula in the past while we were anticipating his budget. We would look at the 2.5%.
Mr. Mosier, I find that the figure of $214,000 very interesting, because I did some back of the envelope calculations, and I came up with the most that the town could come up with would be probably about $275,000, which is not much different than your figure. And if the school department was to request, for the sake of argument, $800,000, you would have a gap, and I don't know how that would be covered, but you would have a gap of $525,000 by my number, and almost $600,000 by your number.
Yeah, I'm not sure that gap could be covered, Mr. Chair.
About going
So say that again.
without either passing a 2.5 override or stabilization, going into stabilization again.
Well, there's only so much stabilization that we can do every year too. I mean, there's only so many years that we can do 8, 10, 12% increases, on the school number. I have 3 children at the school, and I want to make sure that we're providing the best that we can for all of the students in town. And at the same time, I wish that we had more police officers and firefighters, and I wish that we had more, plows in the street, and I wish that we had the money to do everything we wanted. And the truth is that without an override or without which frankly, I don't think is going to happen, nor am I advocating an override, but without extra revenues coming in that aren't coming in, the numbers just don't add up. So I've actually been sitting in on some of the budget meetings over the last couple of weeks with department heads as an observer at the request of the town administrator. And I can tell you that my observations on this budget is that it's going to be really, I think, an impressive feat just to make sure that we can maintain everyone's jobs who are currently involved working for the town. And I think in speaking with the town administrator, that's his first priority. Literally, we're at the point where we're just trying to save everyone's jobs. And I don't mean to sound overly dramatic, but there is no extra money in this budget. And if a number comes in that's drastically different than that 2.5% increase, I don't know, something's going to give. And so hopefully after I think the generous increase that we had last year for the school's number and deserved, that it's closer to that 2.5% number this year that every other department in the town is dealing with.
I agree. And if I can just say, when I came in 2015, yeah, we were under the just as bad back then. And then we built it all up. So yeah, it's frustrating, it goes in waves, I guess. And I'm hoping that the school remembers how generous the town was last year.
Andrew's right. I mean, 400,000 came out of stabilization. So we're meeting that match with taxation dollars because we've already given it to them. So it's not like we're going back into the well, and then we're going to increase by another 2.5%. So when you think about it, it's not just that they're getting the 200,000, they're going to get the 400,000 plus the 2 from taxation dollars.
Yeah, I mean, even at a 2.5% increase, that I'm writing down on a notepad, if that were to be the case for fiscal year 2026, over 2 years, that's like almost $1.2 million increase, which is substantial.
I just would like to add a comment, and I hope when I go to the MMA conference that I will meet a state official or somebody and point out year after year, the schools, they have an increase, which is fine. And I'm glad they have the increase. And the municipal side of the budget has an increase. But there's always a 1.5% to 2% difference in the town portion. The formula is different, and the town always gets a lower percentage than the schools, at least in the last 3 years that I've seen it. And not only does the town get a lower percentage increase, which is good, they in turn have to turn around and help fund the school foundation budget. So it's kind of a double whammy. And I hope I can talk with somebody about this issue. I think it's a very important issue, this gap.
Well, when House 1 gets released at the end of the month, you'll have a better determination to where the dollars are and what the state's going to provide.
Hey, thank you. Unless anybody wishes to comment, I wish to move on. And I think next item I on the agenda is discussion and possible recommendation concerning state payment in lieu of taxes monies following Mayor Wu of Boston, her formula. Mayor Wu, probably close to 40% of the tax base in Boston is exempt because they are nonprofits. They have world-class hospitals, you have world-class universities, but when you add up all the tax base is very, very narrow. And what Mayor Wu proposed, some of the nonprofits, they pay pilot monies to the city and some don't pay, or they don't pay what Mayor Wu feels is their fair share. So what she did was she came up with a formula, and the formula is it's the assessed value of the nonprofit. So let's say it's the properties of Northeastern University. So rather than be assessed at the residential rate, it is her formula is proposing that you take a percentage of that assessed rate, which is a hypothetical assessed rate. And then you ask the nonprofit to pay 25% of that amount. So for example, if the taxes would be $10 million, then under her formula, they would be assessed at 25% of that. And then in turn, pay 25% of that amount. And I guess the best way to, if you follow the Mayor Wu formula, is 20% of the lands in Templeton are owned by the state. And the state makes payments in lieu of taxes every year. It was under $100,000 a couple of years ago, and Representative Zlotnik was able to persuade his fellow members of the legislature to raise that to, I believe, around $155,000. But if you apply Mayor Wu's formula, where if 20%, well, 20% of the properties are assessed at a value like a house, you end up with 20% of of 25% of the $11 million budget. And if you break that down and take 25% of that figure, you end up with a figure of around $687,000. So applying that formula, instead of the state paying under $200,000, under Mayor Wu's formula, which makes an assumption that the lands would be assessed at, the value of a residence, which is overly high. But if it was assessed that way, the state should be paying in pilot monies $687,000. And if you took it as, vacant land or forest land, which is what it is, the share of pilot money should still be well over $300,000. And it just seems to me that the pilot that's paid now does not seem to follow any kind of a formula. And I do think that the town could benefit if the legislature decides to adopt her formula. Then I think Templeton as a town with a great deal of state land, and potentially where the state is already paying pilot money, there could be the potential for a bump up if that formula is followed. So I guess my question, my first question is, are any of you familiar with Mayor Wu's proposal? And I guess my second question would be, are there any thoughts on that?
So I'm not familiar with the particular proposal from Mayor Wu. I know that having lived in Boston over the years, there have been different proposals over time that different mayors have tried to get in place. I remember Mayor Menino going through a similar process, if I remember correctly. I think it would be nice if we could have some sort of a metric that we could hope to get money. Pilots are voluntary, and it's really just hoping that the entity will provide some funding for us. And the idea to try to make it easier with a formula, I think, is so that we can be able to ask them more directly or have an understanding of what we might be able to project. Is that your sense, Mr. Chair?
I like your use of the word metric, because my sense is that there is not a statewide metric. It just seems like it's kind of like making a soup and throwing a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of ragu and gumbo, and you come out with something, and it's different every year, and it's not consistent, and there's not a metric, or if there is a metric, it's buried somewhere. And I feel that it's not only a problem for Templeton or an issue for Templeton. All you have to do is go down the road to Ashburnham, 60% of their land area in Ashburnham is state-owned property. And I think that the pilot that is paid is really not reflective of two things. It is the state-owned lands in this town. There's a lot of acreage that can never be built upon because it is part of the Quabbin Reservoir watershed, either directly or indirectly. It will never be built upon. So it's a resource that's being taken from the town without, I think, adequate monies being paid. And the second issue is that of fire safety. You got literally probably 80 to 100 years worth of dead wood. There hasn't been a major fire in this town for 150 years. And certainly the potential for a large forest fire. And yet I think this would be a vehicle, the pilot would be a vehicle, and you can justify it for the fire protection to be extended and increased over 20% of the town's land, or in the case of Ashburnham, 60% of the town's land. So, I think there's justifications for, some metric being applied. What that is, I'm not sure.
So who, you want the state to pay the pilot?
Well, the state is already
Right.
paying a pilot. They're already paying a pilot. But my argument is that they are not paying the pilot according to an established metric or formula, and that the amount is really a very small amount considering the very large percentage of land that is owned by the state. It's a very large percentage.
Right. So who makes the decision on what the pilot is every year?
That is a decision of the legislature.
Based on appropriation.
Right.
Correct. So, I mean, unless they agree to come up with some metric, then we're kind of, it's a wish, right?
Well, they don't have a metric. I have spoken with Representative Zlotnik about this issue, and he has helped the town by, I asked him to increase it, and he did increase it. And it has been gradually increased, but when you look at the amount of land and what's being paid, it just doesn't seem like from the town's perspective to be a fair number.
I mean, I agree with you. The more money we can get from the state for the land that they own would be tremendous, because that's money that we can't have on the tax roll. So, do you have I know you've done a lot of research on this, which is why I'm asking you these questions, and you've given it a lot of consideration. Do you have a metric in mind that you think would be appropriate? Is it Mayor Wu's formula? Is it something different?
It would be Mayor Wu's formula. Excuse me for 1 minute. So this is the Mayor Wu formula, roughly, and it would be assume that 20% of the land in town is owned by the state. That's a known figure. It might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit less. And the town budget is going to soon be $11 million. So if you took Mayor Wu's formula is 25% of the assessed, full assessed residential value. And it's a high number. I mean, this is, vacant forest land, but it's a high number. But if you have a town budget of $11 million, and her formula is, and the state owns 20% of the land, then 25% of the $11 million is $2.75 million. Is potentially the assessed value of the state-owned land. This is using Mayor Wu's formula. and then if you, and then if you take 25% of that figure, $2.75 million, you come up with a figure of $687,500. So the gap is the Commonwealth pays under $200,000 at present. So you're talking about a gap of $400,000, or a little bit more than $400,000. And even if you ratcheted down being forest land, even if you ratcheted down that, it would still be, applying the formula, it would still come out into the $300,000 to $400,000 range. And so the gap would be, instead of being $400,000, the gap would be $150,000 over what the state pays presently. It's a lot to verbalize this. It's a lot to verbalize this, but but my point is that there is a gap. My point is that there is a gap, and there's not a metric, to use your words, there's not a metric. So I think what I would like to do is I would like to table this. And I would like to write out the formula and send it, communicate that, to you individually.
That'd be great.
I think that'd be the best way, but I just want all of you to think about this, because again, it's we need to ask the state, and this is one way. I look at this, it appears that this is kind of low-hanging fruit as far as an ask, if we did it right. And so I think the next best step is for me to write out Mayor Wu's formula, and then a high and a low range, and then have you each of you kind of chew on it until our next meeting. Would that be agreeable?
Sounds good to me.
Yes.
Julie, is that
Yeah,
agreeable?
that sounds fine.
Okay, all right. I would like to entertain a motion to table this at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Julie beat me.
Julie Beach.
I always beat you, John.
Thanks, Julie.
Hey, Julie, how would you vote on that motion?
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Jacqueline,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right. All right, thank you. Okay, item J. I placed item J on the agenda. This would be discussion on update of comparison towns for budgeting purposes. We last did this approximately 2 years ago, and we have 13 towns that are comparison towns. These are out of the 351 cities and towns within the Commonwealth. These are the 13 towns that most closely match Templeton in terms of a number of different areas. And the the towns are as Capitalist just showed me a chart of that. I just feel that this should be updated every couple of years, and it's been a couple of years since it was updated. The last two comparisons that have been done were very, very well done. First by Will Spring, who was a previous member and longtime chair of advisory, and also by Cameron Forts. I believe he was the last person to do it. And what I would like to do is I would I'd like you to think about it. I don't want to put you on the spot tonight, but I think the best way to go about this is to have one of our members review the existing comparisons, and also there's a I believe it's a Department of Revenue website, which gives all of the comparisons of the 351 cities and towns. You know, we already have 13 towns, but there's probably 1 or 2 or maybe 3 towns that need to be either added or dropped to make this up to date. And it's really very important to have comparisons for budgeting purposes. It helps in, you know, most recently we've used it to look at, you know, what the town accountants should be paid. That's one use of it. Another is, you know, the DPW budget for paving of roads. There's that. And it's just a way to see whether our spending is in line with the other towns, the other comparison towns. It's a difficult comparison for some of them. For example, Upton is one of the towns on the existing comparison town, but Upton has a median income that is twice that of Templeton. So, you know, the way they fund their basic services, in many ways, is a lot different than what Templeton does. But then again, that you have other towns that are really very, very close. Orange is certainly a town that's very close. Again, when you look at median income, it's very close, and you know, the type of services and the personnel and what the personnel are paid. So it's really it's probably one of the more important functions that advisory performs, because this is a table that's used by the select board and is used by you know, other town officials. Would there be any interest, you know, tonight, or do each of you want to have a chance to think about this until our next meeting? Does anybody wish to comment?
Mr. Chair, I would just be curious as to why we wouldn't be requesting the Board of Selectmen do this.
It appears, for, you know, at least during the time I've been on advisory, that it is advisory that has done this.
It was tasked to us from the select board.
Oh, okay, thank you. I was just curious. I got a little lost on that one.
Nope, totally get it.
Yeah, I just think this is really more of an advisory function than a select board function. That's how I feel about it. I see us as a board that makes recommendations, and this is really, I think, best falls in the category of a recommendation.
Understood.
Any more thoughts? Is this something that, again, would you like me to table this until somebody can think about this?
I can take a crack at it.
Mr. Capellas?
Sure. And we can bring it back.
Mr. Capellas graciously has offered to take a look at the towns and the numbers, and would you have enough time to report back to the committee next month?
Yep.
Okay.
All these numbers are on the DLS website.
Right.
It'll take me 20 minutes.
Right. Okay. Right. As I said, Mr. Capellas has graciously offered to do this. Is everybody in agreement? Okay. Do we need a motion?
No.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, there be no further discussion, then thank you, Mr. Capellas, and we'll put it on the agenda for next month. The next item, K, discussion on the status of renovations of the Boynton Library. Jacqueline, I wanted to ask you,
So I was sent the stuff for the feasibility study, and that's really all we're at. I haven't heard what the next steps are, if it was going out to bid. Maybe that's the next step. I'm not quite sure, but I was just curious if there was anybody had any kind of knowledge of a timeline of when things are gonna start moving along over there.
I do have a question for you, Jackie. Did you get the report from the architect?
Yes, that was in the feasibility study.
Okay, so is it done?
Um, it's just kind of like plans, and that was kind of it. Was
Okay.
really, and it said, areas of concern that it was, concerns about the bathroom layout. That it wasn't within compliance of where the sink and the toilet is.
Right. So that's good. That's progress from the last time we discussed this in September, right?
Yes.
And so it would seem to me, not being the person who's in charge of the project, that, yeah, we're getting closer to being able to make a request for proposals, or, put it out to bid, I should say. And I know that that's kind of the goal. So I'm glad to see that there's some progress. I'm glad that we were able to discuss it again tonight as an agenda item.
I would just like to add this comment. The budget versus actual questions that were generated at a previous meeting, a lot of it had to do with library monies. There's one item for 69 plus $1,000, another item during the library for $260,000, and a third item, a library grant item for $131,000. And my question at the time, and I think other members' question at the time, is there's a lot of money to be hanging out there on the budget versus actual report. And one of the things that I hope is that we have the town accountant next month, and certainly one of the written questions that I will have will be on the library monies. I think we need to have a discussion of the library monies because, as I said, that's one of the biggest single items of unexpended monies on the whole budget versus actual report.
I think you're right, Mr. Chair, and if my memory serves me, I think that there was some money that was allocated previously to this project or to these ends, and then there was also some money that was donated by either the friends or trustees or private parties or something like that. We'd have to double check on those numbers, but that's how I remember the conversation, and that's one of the reasons why we've now started discussing this at multiple advisory committee meetings, is to try to push this over the finish line, or at least make some progress on it, because that money is allocated to getting these repairs done. And it's been a long process that predated my time on this committee. And so the faster we can get it to fruition, I think the more it makes sense for the library and the members of our community that use it.
Mr. Chair, I do know that some of it was a gift from
Yes.
for the library. I don't know where the rest of it is from, and I don't know if there's a way when it does go out to bid to get more bids, because we'll run into the same situation that we just had with the senior center kitchen, where there's one single solid bid, and then our hands are kind of tied, and whatever is allocated or not, 300,000 or not, could be pennies compared to what really needs to be done there. I mean, all the knob and tube wiring is an expense, and then it's all horsehair and lath, so it's all cracked and falling apart. So, is there a way to get more bids, or I mean, I know you talked about that in a previous meeting about.
I think it goes into a discussion in part of the prevailing wage
Yes.
issue. I was very disappointed that there was only one bid at all, that nobody else even bid, because I'm sure other contractors had the bid specs, and I just was very surprised that there was only one bidder. And not only was there one bidder, it was for a dollar amount that was over double the original allocation of $150,000 in ARPA monies from 3 years ago. So, I look at part of it as, I understand government procurement is different than, procurement in private industry, but just, I was very disappointed. No, I'll leave it at
Same.
that.
And you think of $100,000 3 years ago and what $100,000 looks like now. It's different. I just don't want to see the same situation where we drag our feet and who knows, the price of the repairs are 10 times the cost.
Well, there's three monsters in this room too. There's three. So you got the Board of Trustees that is in charge of all that. Then you have Bob Sozik, who's head of buildings and grounds and all the buildings and stuff. Then you have the person who does the bidding, which is, we have one person in the town, which happens to be in that back office. So, and because there's a specific law that you have to follow when you follow the bidding processes in Massachusetts, and it actually have to go to a class, you know, to even practice that, to do that. So it's challenging in all three levels, and just to get in the specifications, which it looks like you've gotten already with the engineer notes and all that stuff, which is great, which is a step in the right direction. I mean, put it this way, we started Scout Hall in 2016. It just got finished this year. That's just,
Yeah.
again, Rome wasn't built in a day. And, you know, town business, it's not like you put an addition on your house, you get a contractor to come in and you're gonna pay X. You know, you pay X, say $100,000 for an addition on your house. We want to put an addition on this building. It's gonna cost $2 million because of prevailing wage. And that's the issue. And nobody, and with the specifications are so tight, a lot of contractors don't want to do the work.
Not to mention, I'm sure there's more historical things
I'm sure. There's,
because of the age of the building.
and you know, you open up a wall, that's a can of worms you're opening up, so you have no idea what's behind it. So, I mean, I wish there was more bids, more bidders that can come forward. But a lot of people they just don't want to, they're afraid of the work. Even though it's huge money, huge.
What's bad, I used to be asked to bid on government work, and my company always refused to do it. And the reason why they refused to do it was they didn't get paid quickly. You have to wait for your money for a long time. You had to meet all sorts of rules and regulations. And it's just, you know, you do a written bid, and then if it ever came up for rebid, all your competitors knew what your price structure was, and you'd always lose the bid the second time around. So I was just instructed never to bid on federal jobs, and you know, really very carefully think about you know, bidding on a municipal or a state job, just the hurdles. I can see why there's only one bidder,
Yeah.
because you can make money faster in other areas.
There was only one bidder for the senior center kitchen too.
Yeah.
Well, and you saw the price of that. It's a gourmet kitchen.
Yeah, but but on the other side of the coin is, you know, they probably bid high because they either didn't want the job or it's so burdensome that it adds to the cost. So, you know, there's two sides of the coin. So.
Yeah. But at least Andrew's right. I mean, at least you got the specifications, at least they're trying to move in the right direction. Have you reached out to Bob?
No,
Sozik at all?
I have
Okay.
not. I just got the stuff right at the end of the year.
Okay. Might be worth your while just to say, hey, just give him a call. What's up with this? He's gonna give you the answer.
Forward movement. That's all. I just want to see forward movement for our little library.
Yep.
It's a little slice of heaven for the moms and the kids in this community. And there's a lot of kids.
She's not around since.
Okay, all right. So hopefully we'll have more discussion with the town accountant next month about the monies in particular. I'd like to move on because this is I probably should have had this earlier rather than at the very end. It's item L, discussion and possible recommendation regarding bonding of the town accountant and town assessors and any other town official who should be bonded. The reason why I placed this on the agenda is I was really quite taken aback that the town accountant position is not bonded. And I really am, because, you know, decisions that the town accountant makes, and also the board of assessors, and there are certainly other town officials that you know, decisions that they make can greatly affect the finances of the town, as we learned with the recent situation with the town accountant. You know, that's an event that may cost the town $65,000. And in my mind, if this person had been bonded, then number one, the town would have been reimbursed the $65,000. And number two, it would be up to the bonding company, rather than the town, to go after this individual, if need be, for the monies. And, obviously a bonding company has deeper pockets than an individual. I was just very surprised at that. So I would like to turn this over to Mr. Kaplis at this time, because I understand, Mr. Kaplis, that you have done a little bit of research about the Massachusetts general laws and the situation regarding bonding at the municipal level in general. So if you could make some comments, I would appreciate that.
No worries. I mean, obviously, it's all, Google is your friend. I mean, obviously I'm looking at the DOS worksheet. This still goes back to July of 2017. Where it's really started coming hidden heavy with bonding and how bonding's supposed to work. And if you're in a position where you're spending taxation dollars, either as a town clerk or a treasurer collector or accountant. But again, it's really bizarre, because if you look at the DOS sheet, accountant itself as a title doesn't come up. But there are certain accountant positions, such like ours, that they actually pay bills. Like our accountant actually paid the bills, like she sent out checks, so to speak. And in doing so, I mean, yeah, you're a treasurer collector, you're accountant, and you're also sending out bills. So that's like my first question I would actually have to ask the chief financial officer, if this accountant in her position of her role and responsibility was it to pay bills, which we've been in multiple meetings with the previous accountant where she did pay bills. In fact, she paid, a couple bills over the cap, if you remember, back a few months back. Where if she's doing or he's doing stuff like that, then obviously that position should be a bonded position, such as the town clerk under Mass General Law, Section 41, Section 13, or the treasurer, which is again under Chapter 41, Section 35, or an accountant under the same section under the Mass General Law. And then the bonding amounts are all different depending on how much dollar amount they're entitled to, or they're encompassed. So like the accountant says encompassing, say, $10 million. Well, her bond might be a little bit more than somebody like, say, the town clerk, who's only around, say, 500,000. So they have dollar amounts based on how much money is handled based on what the minimum bond requirements are. So there's a formula that the DOS puts out for all municipal employees. From, like I said, the town clerk position, the treasurer collector position, and or the accountant position. And then there's actually, other positions within town government. They call them other municipal positions within town government, which also could be a bonded position, such potentially as a chief financial officer in the town, because he's ultimately responsible for the entire nest egg. So would that person would be a bonded issue? Again, these are questions that I would recommend to see what the select board would think, because obviously the recommendation from us would go to them, and it would be up to them as a select board to make a determination of who should be bonded and who shouldn't, and what the amount should be, based on the DOS and the Department of Revenue.
Mr. Kaplis, I
Yep.
have a question.
Yep.
What did you discover concerning who shall be bonded and who should be bonded?
Well, based on-
Were you able to make that
I
determination?
did, well, based on what Mass General Law says, I mean, the town clerk, the treasurer collector, and if the account is spending dollars, they all should be bonded. Those three positions should be bonded. And the amount of the bond and what bonding company that they're going to use is all going to depending on how much dollars of the town dollars that they're responsible for. The account has full oversight of the entire, all the accounts. So, I mean, obviously hers would be a little bit higher than, say, somebody that would be responsible for a lesser amount. So I'm not sure what the amounts would be, depending on what they're in. But as far as what the law stipulates and what the ELS stipulates is that, bonds should take place for those positions, like I said, such as the town clerk, the town treasurer collector, and or the accountant, if the accountant is paying bills and using taxation dollars to pay bills.
And do you know who is actually bonded?
I don't. I have no idea. Not in this town. I have no idea.
My understanding is that our treasurer collector is bonded.
That's my understanding as well, but who beyond the treasurer collector is bonded? Doesn't seem like anybody's bonded
Right.
beyond
Well,
that position, am I correct? Mr. Moser?
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that. I do know that under law, it looks like it's supposed to be town clerk, town treasurer, collector.
I mean, I'm very troubled by, from what you've described is, it appears that the accounting function in this town is directly handling money by paying bills. Is that correct?
That's my concern. I don't know for a fact. I have to obviously go back to the chief financial officer to figure that out. But if that person, the whole point about being bonding is if you're spending money of taxation dollars, then you should be bonded. So
Right,
if the treasurer collector is, you know, because again, the accountant's the accountant. I mean, the treasurer collector should be spending the money. I mean, that's where the money should come in and go out, and the accountant does all their accounting work. But if the accountant is actually paying bills, that would open her up to a potential bond issue if you, or not. It's all gonna depend on who and what the select board decide. But I mean, what I found out as far as under the Mass General Law is concerned, I mean, if you look at treasurer collectors or even the town clerk, they're spending taxation dollars. So that's why they need to be bonded. But if the accountant is also spending those dollars, then obviously that would be something that needs to be looked at.
I would just say that to level set with bonding, I'm not sure, we'd have to research and see what the bond would cover. I'm not sure that it would cover like, oh, I filed some paperwork late and now we got a fine from the IRS. It's more like, hey, this person is stealing money, or hey, we're gonna send out a fraudulent check to somebody else to cash, or there's some scheme on a check that's being stolen from the town or something like that. It's more like embezzlement or financial malfeasance. I'm not sure that bond, while it may make sense to have a discussion about bonding, I'm not sure that it would have been relevant to the discussion that seemed to bring this up.
I'm concerned about exposure.
Right.
I'm very concerned about that, and bonding limits exposure of the town. And it's short money, it's a very small amount of money to prevent potentially a very large loss or exposure, a loss of money.
I do know that most of the issues that happen with dollars of town dollars, not this town, but specifically, I'll use Westminster, for example, because obviously their accountants did some bad things over there too. Upwards of a few mil, and again, the accountant wasn't bonded, even though they were paying bills. So I mean, the disconnect of the dialogue based on the DOS or the Department of Revenue is what it breaks down to. Either if you use other special or other agents or other personnel, if they're paying bills, then it should be looked at as a bonding issue. That's all. And again, we need to have insight, hindsight, and some type of, a checks and balance. But again, this is, again, another question that goes to the select board for their review to say who, and even the chief financial officer. I mean, Adam has a big role to play in this because he has to make that determination. I mean, the treasurer collector is bonded because she actually gets the money that she brings the money in and brings it to the bank based on requirements, based on security measures that have been in place, based on the management policies that are in place.
And that also appears to be required by statute.
It is, and she is, as Andrew indicated, and so is you, which I didn't know. But if there's other departments in the financial partnership here, such as the clerk or the treasurer collector or the accountants, if they're paying bills and using the account to pay bills, then they're just as responsible as the treasurer collector by receiving the funds.
I think that in order for us to get more clarity on this, we ought to maybe solicit that information from the select board and or the town administrator. I don't think this is something that we can solve tonight because we don't have the information that we need.
You know what I was going to suggest, Mr. Kaplis, maybe in your consideration of the comparison towns, maybe you can look into how they structure their finance department. Just as an example, I'm quite familiar with the town of Upton, and I know that they have a finance department, which I believe includes the treasurer and the accountant and the assistant accountant and a couple of other officials.
Mhm.
And under that arrangement, I can check on my own and find out if they're all bonded. I can check that very easily, but perhaps in your study of the comparison towns, maybe you could determine, what their structure is, and perhaps I could, call up the individual town administrators and find out who is bonded and who's not.
I'll look into that.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Are there any other comments? Okay. I think I'm going to end the discussion, and we'll place that as well on the agenda.
Sounds good.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to start with member comments. Mr. Mosher, do you have any comments that you would like to make?
I do. Happy New Year to everybody. It's nice to be back working on the committee with all of you. I saw in the news this morning, Governor Healy was going to announce part of her budget that had to do with transportation, and she was utilizing some of the money that came in from the income tax surtax, also known as the millionaire's tax, if you heard about it or remember that in the news the last couple of years. And out of the money, I think that she wanted to steer $765 million out of the nearly $2 billion available in surtax funds to the transportation needs of the Commonwealth, which was great. And as you dig a little bit further into it, you find out that 500 million of that is to the MBTA. Another 110 million was to regional transit authorities, and another 55 million to MassDOT. There was a $100 million increase that she's proposing to Chapter 90 funds, which will bring the amount from 200 million to 300 million, which is great. But when you look at it, you realize that with some of the other revenues that the state allocates toward the T, we're now going to be putting $2 billion of state money every year toward the T. They have a budget of $3 billion. And we have $300 million going to Chapter 90 funds. Now, we've had a lot of debate and discussion in this town about bridges that are falling apart, roads that need to be repaired, and frankly, the unmanageable debt that some of the smaller towns in the Commonwealth are encountering due to these aging infrastructure. And I'm just very disappointed that with the allocation of the funds that we're going to see, a couple $1 billion going to the T to serve a part of the state where we just have $300 million for the 351 cities and towns to deal with their infrastructure problems. Maybe going forward, there's a way that some of that money could be reallocated to help with the problems that we're dealing with in Templeton.
Thank you, Mosher. Julie, do you have any closing comments you wish to make? Julie? Oh, go to you. Jacqueline, do you have any closing comments?
I do not have any closing comments right now.
I do not. Thank you.
I as well do not have any closing comments. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Mosher, a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Julie? Jacqueline?
Yes.
Yes.